I say we give him one more minute and then go ahead and get started. And Tyler, do you want me to hit start broadcast to get started? Are you ready, Tyler?
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation of the Kirk webinar series entitled Effective Outreach to Drive Recycling and Reuse Behavior. My name is Larry Cook. I'm the Recycling Coordinator at the University of South Carolina, as well as Chair of the Kirk Board of Directors. I'll be your moderator today. For those of you not familiar with Kirk, the College and University Recycling Coalition is a member-based organization that works to grow collegiate recycling and waste reduction efforts by fostering technical information exchange and networking opportunities between the staff and student leaders implementing programs. Today's program is part of our free Kirk webinar series, which is designed to highlight innovative campus programs and provide trends and perspectives on a broad range of operational, educational, and other topics related to collegiate recycling and sustainable materials management. This is the second of 6 webinar programs generally held every other month on the first Thursday from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll have more information to share about upcoming programs at the end of the webinar. Before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, Waste Management, for making today's webinar possible. I also want to acknowledge Keep America Beautiful and ASHE, the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education, for the planning and promotional support for the overall 2016 series. We have a few housekeeping notes to go over. If you have problems with your audio or video during the webinar, you can reach a live technician by calling GoToWebinar's customer support line at 800-263-6317. Because of the size of the audience, all of your lines are muted. We encourage you to submit questions at any time, however, by using the dashboard on the right side of your screen. Simply click the plus symbol where it says questions to type us a note, and we will read those out loud when we get to the end of the presentations. One final note, we will be placing the slides and a recording of the webinar on the Kirk website within the next day so that you can review the session or share it with colleagues. Okay, let's get started. Today's program is focused on changing people's recycling and waste reduction behavior. While much of the effort in recent decades has focused on expanding access to recycling, it's also become clear that serious waste reduction programs must engage people to ensure they use this infrastructure and go the next step to embrace reuse and waste prevention in their daily routine. Behavioral research has repeatedly shown that most people are willing to recycle and make other environmental lifestyle changes. So why do we still find reams of office paper in the computer lab trash bin? Or professors sitting in their offices with a paper coffee cup? Our panelists today will address this question and share concrete examples of how campuses across the country are increasingly taking a more sophisticated approach to their education and outreach efforts. We'll begin with Jennifer Tabanico of Action Research, give a primer on the social science behind what motivates people to act, as well as share some of the factors that distinguish effective engagement efforts that have a measurable impact against those that fall flat. We'll follow Jennifer's presentation with 2 case studies, beginning with High University in Eastern Pennsylvania. Delicia Nauman and Catherine Target will tell us about Lehigh's waste reduction outreach to Greek houses to address contamination, encourage food composting, and other steps. We'll close with Jamie Adams from the State University of New York at Oswego, learning about their recently completed Tap In campaign to drive the use of refillable water bottles on campus. We're going to lead off with Jennifer Tabanico. Jennifer is president and owner of Action Research, a firm that specializes in changing behavior for the public good by applying marketing and social science research to outreach programs that promote clean, healthy, and sustainable communities. Jennifer has a Master's of Arts degree in experimental psychology from California State University and more than a decade of experience developing and implementing community-based social marketing programs for public and private agencies. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the webinar today. Can I just make sure I can advance these slides? So my presentation is titled Beyond Education, Using Social Science to Promote Recycling. So as you explained in the introduction, what I'll be talking about is how we can go beyond simply educating and raising knowledge and awareness about recycling and the importance of recycling and integrate a large body of social science research where we know quite a bit about the underlying motivations for behavior and barriers that people face to engaging in recycling programs. So I've been committed to this approach to behavior change for more than a decade and have developed a company around that integrates social science principles into programs that are working to promote clean, healthy, and sustainable communities. So recycling programs on college campuses and in communities elsewhere are a natural fit with this approach. The first thing that I want to share with you is why behavior matters. So when we look at environmental issues globally, from waste to pollution issues, climate issues, natural resources, or habitat preservation, if we really look closely at those environmental issues, we very often find that there are origins to those problems in human behavior. So individuals' purchase decisions or daily habits and choices are very often related to the outcomes we see in the environment. So in terms of recycling, decisions about using reusable containers or where to place certain items in bins are individual choices that impact space in the landfill and other waste-related issues. So one approach to addressing these types of problems has been to take a technology or policy approach. And while these approaches can be effective, so we develop more things that are recyclable, or we develop better systems and technologies for collection and managing waste, or we develop policies such as zero waste policies that we see now globally. While these have a tremendous impact on the overall problem, they come with their own sets of barriers. So policies, as we all know, take time to implement, and policies are only as good as the people behind them that engage in the behaviors and policy-related decisions. In addition, technologies take time to penetrate the market, and so we're still then left with individual voluntary behavior change very often, and that's really what most of you on this call are dealing with in your programs. So because behavior is at the root of these issues, we can actually draw from a large body of research in the social sciences. So social sciences have been studying human behavior across a wide range of issues for over 100 years, and we know quite a bit about how people make decisions and underlying motivations for behavior. And we can use this guidance and integrate it into our programs. Not only does behavior matter, but as it turns out, the behavior matters. So if you even just look within a single domain like recycling, or even just recycling on a college campus, there are a wide range of behaviors related to that. And some of these are one-time behaviors, such as purchasing a reusable bottle. But some of these are repetitive, so using and filling the reusable bottle instead of single use, or placing extra materials into a recycling bin, a paper, for example. So there are a number of different actions, and as it turns out, each of these actions even though related, can be very different in terms of the cost, difficulty, or other obstacles associated with them. So just because somebody uses a reusable water bottle on a regular basis doesn't mean necessarily that they're putting all of their extra notes into recycling bins, or that they're always printing double-sided, or that they're recycling the materials in the proper bins. So each of these behaviors, though related, come with their diverse set of barriers. So I want to switch now to just a brief discussion of how we have traditionally attacked behavior change in our programs. And traditionally, the approaches have taken one of three avenues. The first is a knowledge-based approach. And these approaches are probably the most common. There are the websites, there are flyers, handouts, workshops. There are a lot of the things that we do, and the underlying premise of these programs is that if people simply knew what to do, then they would change their behavior. So we educate them about how to properly recycle, that they can buy reusable containers, and so on, with the hope that they will then have this increased knowledge and change behavior. Unfortunately, the research is very clear in showing that simply having knowledge about how to do something is not sufficient very often to motivate behavior change. And there are other things that stand in the way of people engaging in various behaviors. The second approach that we see very often is more of an awareness approach. And this means if we can get people to care enough about the issue, then they will do it. So we see a lot of messages that talk about the harm to nature from waste-related issues, dwindling landfill space, water quality, polluted water bodies, and so on. And we assume then if people just care, if they care about the impacts on nature, or if they see that this is such a big problem, that they will surely change their behavior. But again, the research base is really clear in showing that there's very small correlation between having a positive attitude about something and actually engaging in behavior change. And lastly, another model that we very often see is an economic-based model. And if these programs are based on an assumption that if we can show people that it is in their financial best interest to engage in the behavior, that they will do it. So if we can demonstrate, for example, how much money people will save by switching to a reusable water bottle from single-use plastics, then surely they will change their behavior. However, again, the research is very clear in demonstrating that simple appeals to economic motivations are very often insufficient to change behavior. And while I don't have time on this presentation to go through all of the background research, I am highlighting here two large evaluations of state and national campaigns that were focused on energy conservation actions. So a wide variety of things from turning off lights to purchasing energy efficient appliances. And I point these out because these are much larger even than college-based programs. They are both programs that were nationwide, and millions of dollars were spent promoting simple, one-time and repetitive actions. And in both of these campaigns, the One Ton Challenge in Canada and also the Flex Your Power campaign in California, the evaluations of these programs showed a significant increases in knowledge and awareness, and particularly awareness about the program. So for the One Ton Challenge, 51% nationwide had heard about the One Ton Challenge and were aware of the messages. And similar with Flex Your Power in California. It was a very well-known program. However, the behavior change associated with these programs, for Flex Your Power, for example, after a 10-year evaluation, was very small to non-existent. And again, there are many other studies that demonstrate this effect, but I think what we show here is even investing in these broad-scale education and awareness campaigns, we have very little evidence for actual behavior change that comes out of them. So what I want to switch now is an approach that is called community-based social marketing. And I'm presenting this as an organizational framework that you can use to follow and develop your programs. but also because it's a natural way of integrating social science. So a key element of community-based social marketing is that its origins come from over 100 years of social science research. So it's not really just a buzzword or a marketing strategy, but really a framework for integrating really in-depth insights about human behavior. Community-based social marketing is also community-based. It is developed from information gathered at a local level and delivered at a local level. And as such, it's a good fit and a good model for university and college-based settings. Community-based social marketing also focuses on removing barriers to action. And it acknowledges that sometimes those barriers are motivational. So they may be things internal to the individual, like lack of knowledge or apathy, or I just don't care. But they may also be structural elements of the program, like a lack of infrastructure. So using this framework, we're able to really understand what's happening behind the individual behaviors. And then lastly, community-based social marketing is behavior-based. And by that I mean that we're focused on outcomes. That is, did behavior change? Are we seeing decreases in our waste stream or increases in recycled material? And it is less focused on outputs. So we're less likely to be counting how many people came to an event, how many brochures did we hand out, how many people liked our Facebook page, and it's very heavily concentrated on measuring behavioral outcomes. The approach has 5 steps, and I'm going to go through them very briefly here just to introduce them, and then I'll go through a little bit more depth through the rest of the presentation. First, we begin by selecting a behavior, and as I pointed out in the beginning, there can be many different behaviors related to just recycling, or even just recycling in a campus setting. Next, we conduct research to better understand the barriers and the benefits to engaging in those specific behaviors. And then third, we develop a strategy that specifically targets those barriers and benefits and integrates best practices from the social sciences. And then we pilot test those strategies on a small scale before rolling them out across an entire campus or an entire university system. So in the first step, we're looking at selecting behaviors. And although community-based social marketing does drill down to individual behaviors, you can still target multiple behaviors at the same time. However, we want to just be strategic about what behaviors we're targeting. So if the desired outcome is reduced waste, then we want to be picking behaviors that are connected to that goal. Next, we want to be thinking about who are the sectors or the audiences that are generating that particular waste. And you might look at students, staff, visitors, kitchen, is it people coming to events? So where is this waste being generated, and where is sort of the biggest chunk of the overall waste stream? And when we make these choices, we want to be making informed choices. So very often our hunches about what other people are doing, what materials they're using, how they're disposing of things are often disconfirmed. So to the extent possible, we want to be looking at technical data, waste characterizations, and even survey data about what other people are doing. So very important to not just think about those things that we are paying attention to, because we, people who are interested in recycling or in sustainability more broadly, pay attention to different things, and we're more likely to notice things that are in line with our beliefs and disregard things that are not in line with our beliefs. So always important to go to find some sort of data to inform our choices. In selecting behaviors and defining behaviors, it's great at the beginning of a program to start with a long list and make this a strategic decision before you kind of drill down to the specific behaviors you want to target. And in creating that list, it's very important to define it in 3 ways. First, you want to define a behavior as end state, so that it's an action that causes an outcome. So placing scrap paper in a desk-side recycling bin would reduce the amount of waste getting to paper in the landfill, or using a reusable water in place of single-use plastic would reduce the amount of plastic getting its way to the landfill. But a broad behaviors like purchase a reusable water bottle, that in itself wouldn't be directly linked to the outcome. So it's actually using the reusable bottle instead of single-use plastic. Next, we want to make sure that the behaviors are non-divisible, and that is that they can't be broken down into smaller actions. So recycle properly is a very broad request and can be broken down into individual items even that may be recycled. And lastly, we want to avoid strategies because, again, these are not directly linked to an outcome. So signing a pledge or attending a workshop may be a means to get people to engage in a behavior, but they aren't behaviors in and of themselves. So always be thinking at the end, is the behavior linked to the outcome? Next, we make efforts to prioritize these behaviors. And I won't go into a great deal of depth on this, but it's good to be asking yourself these three questions when we are thinking about what to target in the campaign. First is, how much is change linked to the outcome? So if you look at your overall waste stream, what are you finding in there? Is it paper, or is it single-use water bottles, or is it something else? Is it paper coffee cups? And if we want to have an impact on that overall outcome, it makes sense we want to focus on the materials that we see a lot of. So what materials are going to create the biggest impact? Second, we look at probability. How difficult is it going to be to change that behavior? So how difficult might it be to get people to print double-sided or recycle scrap paper as opposed to getting people to eliminate the use of single-use water bottles? So looking at probability for each of those different behaviors that you might target. And lastly, how many people are already engaged? So to what extent are people already doing the right thing? And ultimately, we want to be picking those behaviors that have a high impact, so there's a lot of room to move, that has a reasonably high level of probability. This is something that we can actually get people to do. And third, that there's some room to move people. So if we're just targeting the couple of professors that are using paper coffee cups, are we really going to get as much of an impact as if we go after a group of people that are, maybe everyone's using single-use plastic? So we want to make sure we have a group of people that can actually be moved. Once we have prioritized the behaviors or set of behaviors, we want to make sure that we have a good understanding of the barriers and benefits that are specific to each of those behaviors. And by barriers, I mean, why aren't people engaging in the desired behavior? So again, those can be internal to the individual, things like motivation, knowledge, attitudes, not having enough time, or they can be structural, elements of the program. So convenience, are there sufficient bins? Is there adequate infrastructure? Is there access? How difficult is the program? How much separation has to happen? Things like that that are outside of the control of the individual. Importantly, multiple barriers can exist simultaneously, so you may need to prioritize what some of those barriers are. And then lastly, barriers can vary by behavior, also by audience, and sometimes by season, depending on the behavior. So what might prevent somebody, and we found this in some of our work with residential recycling, is that people have different reasons for not wanting to recycle things like peanut butter jars or cereal boxes. Their reasons are different than they are for why they might not want to put their junk mail in the trash. On one hand, they have concerns about having to rinse things out. In the latter case with junk mail, they have concerns about privacy and having their information go into the recycling. So really being able to identify an understanding of what the barriers might be at the level of the material or action is really important to a successful campaign. I want to point out, however, that we cannot base the barrier and benefit research based on hunches about what we think might be the reasons that people don't act. Again, what might be a reason for us or what might work for us as program planners is often very different from our target population, people who are generally disengaged and not necessarily think in the same mindset as we all are. So always as a starting point, even with a limited budget and limited resources, it's almost always possible to conduct literature reviews. That is, what have other people done and what have others learned about barriers to recycling different types of materials or to reusing. You can also conduct observations, so watching what people put in different bins, for example, or conduct small focus groups or discussions with people on campus. As a next step, as resources permit, we would gather quantitative information through the use of surveys from people about the extent to which different topics or different issues are barriers that might prevent them from engaging in the behaviors. And those might be in-person, telephone, mail, or web-based, depending on the audiences that you're working with. So only once we have gathered information about barriers and benefits to the best of our abilities do we move on to strategy development. And that is when we start thinking about what tools we might integrate, what social science tools might be a good fit. So with community-based social marketing, the way we go about developing strategies are first to remove any barriers we identify. So if there were infrastructure barriers or lack of access or lack of knowledge, we would want to make sure we address those barriers and also enhance any motivation or benefits that might be attained from engaging in the behavior. So this next graph represents a way that we do that, and the barriers represent a wall that keeps you from getting to your goal. And so one way and the wavy lines then represent motivation or movement toward the goal. We have to have some level of motivation, otherwise there's no movement toward the goal. So one way to get people to continue to move toward your goal would be to just simply lower or remove the wall of barriers. However, the most effective approach is going to be one that simultaneously raises motivation and brings down the barrier wall. And that is what you see in that bottom half of the graph in B there, where we've enhanced motivation and brought down the barriers, and that will get you most effectively and efficiently to your goal. The second element, or third element that we look at in developing these strategies are leveraging wherever possible personal contact. So we know from a large body of research that information and awareness campaigns that are simply mass media, a lot of TV, a lot of radio, billboards, these reach a lot of people, but unfortunately are associated with very low rates of behavior change, whereas one-on-one personal contact or discussions achieve a much higher level of behavior change. So if you all think about the last book you read or the last movie you went to see, it's likely that you were more likely to have seen that, gone to see it based on what your friend or a colleague told you rather than seeing the trailer on television. And then lastly, we integrate tools from the social science. So in just a few more minutes that I have left, I want to go through what some of the most relevant and feasible tools are that work well for recycling campaigns. Number one is convenience. To the extent you can make the program easy, you're more likely to enhance participation and reduce barriers. Second is commitment. So commitments work by leveraging an individual's self-perception. We have an innate desire for wanting our attitudes to be consistent with our values and also with our behavior. And we also want our past behavior to be consistent with our current behavior. So this is a way that we are able to leverage people's previous attitudes or previous behaviors or commitments in order to get them engaged in future behaviors. Importantly, when asking for commitments, and these can be things like pledges that we see very often, but importantly, these commitments must be voluntary. We also know that commitments are most effective when they are written. So a written pledge would be more effective in most cases than a verbal commitment one-on-one. And also to the extent you can make commitments public, they are more likely to be effective. So posted in a public location that is long-lasting. So here's an example from Keep America Beautiful of pledges that people took to recycle in their community. We see these all over the place. It's a very common approach in terms of recycling. The other type of strategy that we integrate from the social sciences is social norms. And there are two types of norms. One is what people approve of, and the second is what people are doing. So on one hand, people can be favorable toward recycling or reuse or waste reduction programs. And on the other hand, people can be not participating. That would be the descriptive norm. So we always want to be conveying, to the extent possible, information about what people are approving of that's in line with your goals and engaged in that are in line with your goals. And this helps us to avoid boomerang effects. So if a large majority of people are already participating in the recycling program, you can leverage that and bring other people along by saying, everybody else is doing this, nobody wants to be the one person that is not. On the flip side, if you are advertising that nobody's participating, that can actually undermine your goal because people tend to follow the group. And then third, one way to create social norms is to group commitments together. So if you have multiple pledges that are posted in a public location, that can convey a social norm of approval of the behavior, but also engagement in the behavior. On this next slide, I just have an example of where feedback about what other neighbors were doing in a curbside recycling program significantly increased recycling programs above and beyond a group that got no information about what their neighbors were doing, and above and beyond a group that got only information about the recycling program. So normative feedback, that's information about what you're doing relative to others, had a significant impact on participation. And then the last tool is prompts. And prompts are a great tool to use when the barrier is simply remembering to act. So if people are forgetting or they forget which materials go where, prompts can be a really good tool for you. And in using prompts, it's very important that they are close in space and time to when the behavior occurs. So a prompt that is directly on a recycling bin or a trash bin is going to be more effective than a prompt or information on a website or on a poster in the hallway. And then second, prompts should be self-explanatory and explicit. So rather than just simply saying, please recycle, a more effective message would be place plastic beverage containers here. So being very specific about what you want people to do. Here's just another example of an effective use of a prompt that's very visual and splits it out and would be placed on a bin. So finally, although it's not a social science tool, we do need to make sure that our messages are recognized and that people pay attention to them. And so there's a number of strategies we can do. We want to make sure that messages are captivating, that they come from a credible source, that they are positively framed and memorable, and that they incorporate some element of goal setting or feedback. All of these elements of communication can really be integrated to help improve our messaging that people pay attention to. And then the last slide here that I have for you here is just a guiding framework that's emerged. I included the reference for when certain tools can be most useful. So in situations where you don't have a lot of barriers, but there aren't really a lot of benefits, very often you can bring people along through strategies like social norms. And then in other situations where there's not a lot of barriers and there's a great deal of benefit, things like simple prompts, education, feedback can be sufficient. Incentives and contests work well if there's a lot of barriers at play. So this is an emerging framework that hasn't been really strategically tested that can kind of help you organize the selection of your tools in different situations. And finally, in all cases, we always want to be pilot testing the programs to the extent possible to test and see if they're working on a small scale before large-scale implementation. And what this allows us to do is test out some different program variations, but also prevents us from deploying a program on the broad scale that is ineffective. And ultimately, that is a cost-saving mechanism. So if it fails in the pilot, then we can go back and refine the strategies and pilot test it again on a small scale. And if after multiple pilot testing, we may need to go back and refine the selection of our behavior. But that's a really important element in just testing things on a small scale with one section of a campus or on one campus only before deploying broadly. The last two slides, I just included some additional resources for people who might want to learn more about the specific tools or about community-based social marketing. Lots to cover in 25 minutes, so I wanted to make sure that you were linked up to some additional information. So with that, thank you very much for your time and look forward to questions later.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. Before we move on to our next presentation, we have a polling question to get a better idea of what common practices among all of our attendees use. So Jennifer covered 5 specific behavior change strategies. Which of these strategies that you see on your screen have you used in your outreach? We encourage you to take the next 10 seconds to click whichever options apply to your situation. If none of these apply, simply ignore the question. In about 45 seconds, we'll be able to see the overall response. While we're waiting, we will put one question to Jennifer. You talked a little bit about pilot programs and before you scale up, and one thing being at a large institution, a lot of what you said, the time-consuming one-on-one outreach is much more effective. Can you talk a little bit about, briefly, prioritizing and how you, as a small staff, probably you get the most impact when you've got to cover 30,000 or more students?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question, and it comes up a lot, particularly when we start talking about in-person outreach. And my suggestion to you would be to look at where you already have people in place, that people that are already communicating one-on-one. So for example, at point of sale in the cafeteria where you could train, or in your stores or convenience markets on campus, where you could train people to say when they're purchasing single-use plastic, they could communicate some sort of program message at that point of sale about, hey, did you know we have these reusables, and whatever the rest of your message is. So very often it doesn't have to be the program planner going out and talking to people one-on-one, but we can leverage existing groups, clubs on campus, other lectures that might be happening. So in terms of one-on-one communication, I think thinking creatively about where you already have those points of contact. And then in terms of piloting, when I say pilot testing, I don't generally mean let's deploy the program for a long time and then see what happens, but really just testing it on a small scale. Maybe you test it just within one department or one building. You test some messaging and see how that impacts your recycling rates by looking at a few bins. So just kind of doing that on a small scale before you fully develop your materials. And I think in most cases, you can find ways to do that with pretty limited resources.
Great. Let's check out those results. It looks like the majority of you are doing convenience and prompts, about a little less than half commitment, social norms, and about half vivid communication. That's great. Great to hear. Next up, we have Delitzia Nauman and Catherine Targett from Lehigh University. Delitzia has served as Sustainability Officer for Lehigh University since 2010. She has been active in higher education sustainability efforts for 15 years. She enjoys watching her hens excitedly find worms in the farmyard. Catherine Targett is the Sustainability Program Manager for the Office of Sustainability. In this role, she oversees the office's communications and marketing efforts, behavior change and operational efficiency consultancy, outreach and engagement, initiatives and events that promote sustainable behaviors throughout the Lehigh community, as well as data tracking and reporting. Catherine also coordinates engagement with programs such as EcoReps. One quick reminder, if you have questions at any time during the webinar, just use the panel on the right and hit the plus sign to ask a question. Over to you, Delitzia and Catherine.
Great, thanks so much. So Catherine and I are very excited to speak to you all today about a program that we have here on campus in our Greek houses. Very similar to the process that Jennifer described. We too follow a behavior change model that has been applied both in our Greek houses as well as outside of our Greek houses with faculty or staff. So we're just going to talk to you today about one project that we worked on in our Greek houses that was really focused on encouraging the members to recycle items that were accepted into our single stream recycling stream, and that is really bottles, cans, papers, and certain types of plastics. So that's what we're going to be focusing on mostly today. I am unable to proceed. Someone wouldn't mind doing that for me. Great, thank you. So just talking a little bit about Lehigh University, we are a private university located in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. We have a little less than 8,000 students, so we're considered a medium-sized university. We are mostly composed of residential students. We have about 30 to 40% of our undergraduate students participating in the Greek system. However, I would say Greek life dominates the social scene. So we believe that if we can set social norms in Greek houses, we believe that it'll have a larger impact across campus, despite the fact that only 30 to 40% live in the Greek houses themselves. So just a little bit about waste management here at Lehigh. The Office of Sustainability does not sit within facility services. We, though, work very closely with facility services because they do oversee our waste management. We do, however, identify areas of improvement. We help create communications and materials that can be utilized by facility services in their waste management program. Facility services then contracts with a custodial service. We use ABM here on campus, and ABM staff are in charge of ensuring that there are the proper color bags in our recycle bins and trash bins. They actually remove the bags as well from the houses and put them in the appropriate compactors that we have on campus. So it's really important that their staff is very intimately integrated into our plans, and they have knowledge of the changes that we're making within each of the houses so that we can really have a streamlined process for waste management on campus. Our waste is taken away to it's a waste to energy plant about an hour from us, and our recycling is sent about 40 minutes away. And we use this information as part of our education efforts to encourage students to recycle over throwing items in the trash, in part because of the greenhouse gas emissions associated with the transport. One of the things that we hear a lot here on campus is that we don't have consistent bins. People don't know what to recycle. They don't think that the custodians actually keep all of the recyclables in the recycling stream. And so we really do a lot of outreach to help address some of the perceived barriers and some of the actual barriers here on campus. One of the things that's really helped us is that in 2010, we moved from dumpsters on campus to compactors, which really allowed us to have very accurate data about what percentage of our streams were recycling versus waste. This is, for us at an institutional level, what our spreadsheet looks like to track our waste. We do share this with the campus, and we also share it specifically with the houses that we're working in, because we do want to show them from year to year what the overall campus recycling rate looks like compared to their recycling rate in their houses. So as I mentioned before, we are talking today about focusing on the Greek system, and we really believe because they set a social norm here on campus that far exceeds the actual numbers of students that live in the Greek houses. Many of our Greek students have told us in the past that they would really like to encourage their peers in their houses to make the right choices. We recognize that they do have the ability to purchase their own products. They have their own chefs. They are very invested in forming a group identity. And so we, as an office, like to take the opportunity to encourage environmental stewardship to be part of that group identity, and for us to be able to work with their chefs and their purchasing managers to ensure that we can purchase alternatives to disposables, or we can cut down on food waste based on back-of-the-house practices. One of the things that we found to be a really effective tool for houses that are not sure whether they would really like to commit to working with our office and to implementing new processes within their house is that Lehigh's accreditation for Greek houses has a section that focuses on sustainability. And so we always like to remind students that by participating and motivating their peers, they are helping themselves in the spring semester while they go in front of the accreditation board. So we found that to be a very useful tool. And when houses do want to participate in our Greek programs, our Greek greening programs, we do encourage them from the onset to really commit as a house to participating in the process for the entire academic year. So we want to talk just about one Greek house in particular, which is Theta Chi. We have worked now with over half of our Greek houses focusing on different elements of sustainability based on what the houses themselves want to focus on. Theta Chi was one of the houses that focused on waste and recycling as their #1 priority. So we intend for the rest of this presentation to really focus on the work that we've done to encourage them to increase their recycling behavior specific to plastics, bottles, cans, and paper. So Theta Chi is similar in size to many of our other houses. There's about 32 beds in the house. There are a number of students that do live off campus but still participate in the house and do attend the house lectures and are encouraged while they're there to really be part of the community. So we do outreach to the entire house, including those that don't have a bed at the house. And also similar for us, Theta Chi has a similar square footage as many of the other houses, which is a little under 11,000 gross square feet of space in the house. We have a number of partners that we work with specifically on the Theta Chi project. As I mentioned, the custodial staff and our staff work very closely. We also work with the residential services who provide assistant director and managers to oversee Theta Chi from a facilities perspective. Our office does oversee our oversees our Eco-Rep program. We do have residential Eco-Rep coordinators and Greek Eco-Rep coordinators. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with the Eco-Rep program, it's just a peer-to-peer education program that is focused on fostering environmentally responsible behaviors within houses. So we have Greek Eco-Rep coordinators that then work with an Eco-Rep from the Theta Chi house. And that Greek Eco-Rep from the Theta Chi house works with their chef and their members as that peer educator.
So at the beginning of the academic year, Theta Chi signed a contractual agreement or commitment to be part of the Greek Eco-Reps program. All fraternities and sororities on campus who want to participate in this program must sign this contract. And all guidelines in the contract must be completed by the end of the spring semester in order to receive full accreditation, as Felicia mentioned previously. The contract is signed by two people. It's signed by the House manager and the Green Committee chair, and it makes the House accountable for setting and achieving goals in specific areas. So through this commitment, Theta Chi, as Delicia has already mentioned, chose specific topics to focus on during the academic year, and they chose waste and recycling. So the Greek Eco-Rep coordinators worked with the Greek Eco-Rep for Theta Chi to identify appropriate targeted behaviors for the House that would fall under waste and recycling. To do this, they first did a visual assessment of House infrastructure and a preliminary waste audit. So this visual assessment included a bin count and placement to see if there was one-to-one ratios of trash to recycling bins, trash and recycling signage above the bins, determining whether there was a lot of food that goes to waste at the House, and determining whether the House used disposable or reusable kitchen items predominantly. During this observation stage, the Greek Eco-Rep coordinators noticed key problems with trash and recycling methods in the Theta Chi House. They noticed that their dining room and kitchen areas were not supplied with enough recycling and trash bins, that a lot of them didn't have one-to-one bin placement ratios, and they also noticed that there was a lot of food waste going into the trash, and they also noticed there were a lot of recyclables in the trash. So the next thing that they did was they surveyed the residents of the House to get a sense of the problem areas in the chapter. And some of the survey questions included, do you separate your recyclables? Do you have 2 bins in your room? Do you know and understand Lehigh's recycling policy? And then after that survey, they then conducted this preliminary waste audit to get a baseline for the House and to get a better understanding of what proved to be in the visual assessment proved to be true in the preliminary waste audit. So based on the observations made through the visual assessment and the preliminary waste audit results, the Office of Sustainability, the Greek Eco-Rep coordinators, and the Greek Eco-Rep for Theta Chi worked on identifying the barriers and benefits and identifying the targeted behaviors, or developing the targeted behaviors. We also brainstormed effective strategies to improve waste and recycling at Theta Chi, make adjustments, and conducted a post-waste audit to see if there was improvement. So the results of the preliminary waste audit proved that the observations that they made during the visual assessment proved to be true. The results showed that the majority of the trash was food waste, and all of the recycling was trash. So the House had an initial recycling rate of 0%. So based on this, the Greek Eco-Rep coordinators and the Greek Eco-Rep for Theta Chi determined 3 main behaviors that they needed to target: increase total recycling rate, decrease recyclables in the trash, and reduce food waste. For the purposes of this presentation, we're going to focus on increasing the total recycling rate, but we use the same community-based social marketing framework to target all of these behaviors in the House. The initial House survey helped the Greek Eco-Rep coordinators and the Theta Chi Eco-Rep to determine all of the barriers, both perceived and real, to the targeted behavior. So these barriers included a lack of proper signage, not knowing what was and wasn't recyclable, not having one-to-one bin placement, not enough trash and recycling bins, not knowing Lehigh's recycling policy, and there being a lot of disposable cups and plates being used at the House. So for this Theta Chi case study, we used 4 primary tools from the community-based social marketing framework to address the targeted behavior. So we used commitments, convenience, prompts, and education and awareness. The other tools we didn't use in this case study, but they may be appropriate for other case studies. So we used the written commitment tool, as I already mentioned. We reminded the Greek Eco-Rep and the House members that they signed this commitment to be part of the program and that they chose waste and recycling. And they were reminded of the specific requirements for this. Since not knowing what was and wasn't recyclable at Lehigh and not knowing Lehigh's recycling policy were identified as barriers to the targeted behavior, we also used education and awareness tool. Through this, the Greek EcoRep coordinators gave a Recycling 101 presentation to House members, and they also, through their biweekly site visits, they would address ongoing or additional issues that they found with the members as well. Additionally, the Greek EcoRep made sure that the chef was aware of Lehigh's recycling policy and did that educational component and answered any questions that they had on what was and wasn't recyclable. Since not having one-to-one bin placement and not having enough trash and recycling bins were barriers to increasing the recycling rate, and not knowing what was and wasn't recyclable, we also used the convenience and prompt tools. The Greek EcoRep coordinators reduced the barriers to recycling and made it easier for members to recycle by ensuring that there was one-to-one bin placed throughout the house, and they added more trash and recycling bins by contacting residential services. And they also developed prompts in the form of trash and recycling signage, like you can see on the slide here, for above the bins, as well as developed installments about waste and recycling for the bathroom stalls in the house. They also did signage as well, which was tailored for the house's waste and recycling to help the members. As you can see here, the post-audit results, there was a tremendous improvement between the preliminary and post-waste audit. In the preliminary waste audit, trash composition was 62% compostables and only 25% trash. However, in the post-audit, trash composition was 90% trash and only 8% compostables, so there was a huge reduction in food waste. In the preliminary waste audit, recycling composition was all trash, so they had an initial recycling rate of 0%. Whereas in the post-waste audit, 96% of the recycling was actually recyclables. So through the use of these tools, we were able to see significant improvements in waste management at Theta Chi. The single-stream recycling rate increased from 0% to about 24%. The number of recyclables in the trash decreased from 13% to 2%. Compostables in the trash, so food waste, decreased from 62% to 8%. And as well, the contamination rate of trash in the recycling decreased significantly as well. So a lot of before we get to the takeaways, I just wanted to mention, so we focused on increasing the recycling rate, but a lot of this also has to do with food waste. So that was a major problem at Theta Chi. And so the first step in getting, so this house currently doesn't have a composter, and so the first step into getting a composter is to show that they could bring their food waste down, which they did here. Significantly through better food storage and management in the kitchen and after dinners and meals. So with that, just some takeaways from this Theta Chi case study are to leverage why students should care. So in our case, this was through partially through the accreditation process and building stewardship in environmental stewardship into the group identity. Developing a strong initial survey to help determine all of the possible barriers so that you can best target those barriers, and thinking outside of the box when brainstorming effective strategies. And then using a combination of the CDSM tools and operational adjustments are sort of a key to success. And then lastly, celebrate the success of the houses. This is an accomplishment that the House members should be made to feel very proud of and continue on from year to year. So with that, thank you very much, and we look forward to hearing your questions at the end.
Thank you. That was great information. We're going to move on to our second polling question before we move on to Jamie. So it's up on the screen now. How have you measured the before and after impact of your outreach campaign? So there are the five choices on the screen now, and as you are filling that out, we do have a quick question for Delicia and Catherine. Have you already, or do you have a plan for periodically checking in on these improvements and seeing if the changes and improvements have staying power?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do conduct waste audits in our participating Greek houses every year, so we can actually look back to the very beginning of our Greek program, which was in 2010, and we can look at waste audit results since 2010 in those houses to identify whether the behaviors are continuing, what some of the challenges are that we may need to address. And we do strongly encourage that sort of follow-up. If it's not through waste audits, perhaps it's through a different means. But as we all know, working in higher ed, students do turn over, and so it is really important that as an office we utilize kind of our staying power to ensure that there are always peer educators that can work with the Greek members as they go first years to seniors and then bringing in a new class.
Great. Let's see if we've got the results of that poll. Okay. Very interesting. A lot of diversity, but audits and surveys look very popular. So moving on, finally, we have Jamie Adams, who is the Sustainability Programs Coordinator at the State University of New York at Oswego. Jamie has been with the university since 2012. Serving as the Sustainability Program Coordinator. She is also an active member of the New York Coalition for Sustainability in Higher Education and a co-chair for the SUNY Sustainability Association. When she is not saving the world, she is also a screenwriting instructor and a mom of two. Over to you, Jamie.
Hi, everybody. Well, thank you so much for the introduction. I know we're probably getting a little short on time, so I'm going to jump right into it. So SUNY Oswego rests. We're in northern central New York, basically right at the bottom of Lake Ontario, closer to Canada than the city, if there's any perspective on that. Our campus consists of about 8,000 students, half on campus on average. Primarily four-year institution. Is the slide lower than it should be right now? Larry, can you tell? Okay. So the Sustainability Office here on campus was established in 2012. Myself and my colleague, who handles engineering and facilities, and I primarily work with students and individual programs. Forgive my stuttering, guys. I'm trying to see if the slide is showing. Okay. Okay. All right. I'm going to try and work with what we got here. Okay. I'm not sure if the slides are going to go forward, but I'm going to go for it here. All right. So the program that we worked with our students on and worked through Recyclemania with was the Tap-In program. The problem that we identified and our specific target for this program was, oh, there we go. Fantastic. Was plastic water bottles, disposable water bottles. We worked out a okay. Bear with me. There we go. So the Tap-In program was conceived to address the issue of disposable water bottle waste on campus. We wanted to work with, and as has been mentioned in all of the programs here, work specifically with empowering students in overall behavioral change rather than simple numbers or waste reduction. So our approach to Tap-In was to first take a look at some of the numbers. As you can kind of see on the screen, what we came around to is about 1.35 million water bottles would be disposed of into the waste stream by SUNY Oswego students in the 30 weeks of the academic year by itself. So that was the kind of information we wanted to empower our students with. But having worked with programs similar to this, we knew that simply taking out the information and telling students information and sort of feeding it to them really wasn't going to get us anywhere. We've done it with a number of different programs, food waste information, recycling information. What we really wanted to do was get an active measurement and get our students working with us on a program rather than us telling them about a program. So after identifying and defining the problem, plastic water bottle waste, we sat down to brainstorm not just with ourselves within sort of our office, but we worked with a group of 62 students from sort of every sort of academic silo across campus to see not only what they knew, but what information really resonated with them and obstacles to potential solutions. So that was a big part of what sort of we felt made a bigger difference in our program than things we had done in the past. Our initial solution, we came up with the Tap-In program, designed the logo, designed all of the elements to it, and partnered with the company Companion. And I do apologize because they're not going to come up nearly as much as they should in this program. They're a fantastic company, and they gave us a real measurable, quantifiable way of rewarding and engaging our students. So, Tap-In program was launched and started out February 8th, right at the beginning of Recyclemania. So with the 62 students that we polled, it was determined that 78% of them cited size and shape for reusable water bottles as being something that would really be hindrance to them. And 71% cited the cost of water or the purity of water. So what we found often was that students didn't think that water from the tap or water from the water fountain was cleaner or purer. So we did have part of our campaign focus on the fact that realistically there's no FDA information that can be held up to certify that water has been purified or is cleaner from the tap than it is from the bottle. All right, so hence the water bottle design. You can see sort of our logo. We've shared some information on there. Students read the bottle, and we'll come back to their secondary design shortly. So after identifying and solving the size and shape concern for students, we worked out the bottle so that it would be perfect for their backpacks and their pockets. We then began the Why Pay More section of our campaign, showing that the FDA regulations for purchased water and tap water are exactly the same, and most large-scale bottle companies, 25% of their water at minimum comes out of the tap. All right, so now that we had brainstormed a solution, we had these water bottles to give out to students. We solved the initial problems that they had presented to us, size and cost. We began our event and Recyclemania by engaging our students to sign a pledge. As has been mentioned, this has got sort of mixed results, but our pledges were put out on tables as they were given free water bottles, reusable water bottles. They signed a pledge to avoid using disposable water bottles for the 8 weeks of Recyclemania. This is one of the more interesting collaborative events that we had. We wanted students to have something physically to sign, something that they could kind of walk away with and know that they had participated. But we really didn't want to go through the paper waste of a live pledge. So we took the recyclable paper from our library. We have these, it's an immense paper waste on our campus, where they print out a cover sheet with just the student's name on it for everything that's printed at the library, resulting in a ton of paper waste. So our students went over, collected those, tore them into squares, and then stamped each of the pledges that the students had the capability to sign. And that is what they looked like. So each of the pledges was individually stamped. Every single one of them looked different. And who came up to get the plastic water bottles or the stickers, we'll get to that in a moment, signed the pledge, and we ended up in the first week of Recyclemania with just over 1,200 pledges signed. So that was pretty exciting. The Fill, Scan, Win program. So this is where we started working into not just collaborative, but engagement and reward strategies for the program. The Companion bottles come with a barcode on the side of them, and we did have the stickers for people to put onto their existing refillable bottles. So every time you refilled your bottle, the purpose of the program was to then take and scan it through the Companion app that you would put on your smartphone, and it logged every single bottle that you then took out of the waste stream that would have otherwise gone into the landfill. So every time students scanned, they entered in their own numbers. It would track their numbers for reuse, but it also had this amazing added benefit to it where it tracked the number of water bottles that were used on campus. So as students tracked their own water bottle reuse ability, they also saw those live numbers go up for their participation in this campus-wide event. This is a little bit, you can take a look at the app here. So you would scan your barcode. It reminds you, you can set reminders on the app to refill your water bottle and stay hydrated. It did have a great opportunity, and it worked in wonderfully with our social media campaign, to share a photo of yourself with your bottle, and it went out across all of the social media applications that were associated with our campaign. The real excitement came for students with the rewards. So for our program, every 100 scans that a student had, so every 100 times they refilled their bottle, they would get free drinks or a free snack from our facility, our on-campus auxiliary services. But also, every single time they scanned, they were entered into 2 separate competitions. One was a competition on our campus, where students would be randomly drawn 2 per week to win a prize through our office. And the other was through Companion itself. They were entered nationally, so for everyone who was using Companion throughout the country. But they were signed up to win really larger prizes, like a GoPro camera, Beats headphones, gift cards. And because of the impact our campus had on this overall program nationally, our students won, 5 separate students won on our campus in the 8-week program. So that was pretty exciting. As I mentioned, we have the ability to track how many bottles were used on campus and per student. So our initial 8-week launch, this is pretty exciting. Our overall goal is to continue this program, but we really wanted to put a high focus on it for the 8 weeks of Recyclemania. So we launched our social media campaign. We had a specific campaign right through our office, but we also had a separate Recyclemania tap-in campaign where students were rewarded not just for their own personal achievements. So if they hit 100 points in the first 2 weeks, they were rewarded on our app, and it was pushed out with photos of them and photos of the bottle. Big announcements through our Facebook page, big announcements, and our social media actually took off pretty significantly in the first week. We had students who were sending us pictures or posting things to their own Instagram with the bottles, with messages saying, you know, every bottle counts, you know, do your own, make sure you're making part of the solution, not part of the problem. It's pretty exciting. So this is a quick example of some of our social media information that went out, and this also is placed on all of the digital screens on campus. So whenever students would walk into different academic buildings, this could come up and remind them to fill, scan, and win. Our direct peer-to-peer engagement occurred at the table at our Marano Campus Center. It is what it sounds like. It's the center of campus, and it's sort of a throughway for students as they go back and forth throughout the academic buildings. So you can see here our direct peer-to-peer engagement with some of our office interns. They would walk directly out to people and say, would you like a free water bottle? Would you like to know how much of a difference you can make? Would you like to win a pair of Beat headphones? Would you like to win a hoodie from our office? So the initial engagement with the student population was massive. And in the first 1 week of this campaign, we gave out over 3,000 bottles and had over 1,250 signatures on our pledge. So here's a little bit of a sign of some of the engagement. You can see the tap-in pledges. We kept the pledge itself out, the wordier one, so students could read it. We would sort of read it back to them and let them know what they were signing up for. And overall, not only was it exciting, students love free things, we all know that, but it was very exciting for the students on a personal level because, again, they could measure their own results and they could see what the campus was doing as far as with removing plastic waste from the waste stream. So you can see this is actually kind of fun too. Faculty got way more into it than I suspected they would. It's pretty exciting to see. A lot of our faculty already had their own water bottles, which made the stickers come in very handy. But they participated every bit as much as the students. They'd remind each other to scan. They'd talk about it in their classrooms and sort of casually promote it amongst the student body. And this is just sort of a sign of some of the direct engagement for students. They had all sorts of different colors they could sign with. So here's some of the social media piece to it. This is mostly, this is all for office interns, but the Sustainability Buddies is what we lovingly call them. Tabling at different events on campus, sharing out water bottles, working with different mascots on campus. It was pretty exciting. And then it started to grow even further, where we were taking cases of water bottles into specific offices on campus. So our radio and television on campus, WTOP and WRVO, both requested bottles for everyone in the office. So we went in, took some photos with them, and we automatically moved the campus-wide radio and television programs. Same thing went for our on-campus newspaper, the Oswegonian. They got super excited. We went in with free water bottles for them, and they automatically wrote stories about it and promoted it, and the whole thing just continued to gather momentum. Here we worked with a couple of different fraternities who thought this was just an amazing opportunity in Greek life to make a direct difference, and it was kind of a cute opportunity for them to have competitions with other houses. Our students were heavily promoting the application. That was one of the things that we found that was a bit more of a challenge for our numbers, is that students are excited about the water bottles and they're excited about the competition, but very often if they didn't download the app right at the table, they weren't going to download it at all. So we had constant messaging going out, social media at the table to remember to download the app and fill, scan, win. Here are some of the prizes that came directly from our office, and in the background you can actually see all of our tap-in signatories. So the students got to walk by and find their names. Our entire wall is actually now fully covered on the outside of our office, and we're not taking them down until graduation. But you can see one of the prizes that was coming from our office, and you can see the small orange bottle that this guy has. That was one of the companion freebie giveaways that they gave us. So these really cool tempered glass bottles that you can drink with hot or cold beverages. We gave those away at the table. We gave those away at the office. And we worked on keeping the community engaged. So after the initial first week launch, obviously momentum was something we needed to really keep up with. So that's where the social media aspect came in. Heavy social media presence, community. That, like I said, was an awesome it just gained its own awesome momentum through the television station, through the radio station, through the newspaper, the different clubs and orgs who got involved. It was very exciting. So that kept rolling, and that really picked up momentum for us about week 3. We did have some confusion between Tap-In and Companion. The Tap-In program is our program. The Companion is our partner in the program. And prizes. Everybody loves prizes. This is coming up on the very last couple of days of Recyclemania. So you can see that in the 8 weeks we saved over 22,656 water bottles, and that's only counting of the 1,200 initial signatories. The number of people of that 1,200 that downloaded the app was only 92. So we really believe our numbers were probably significantly higher, but the trackability of this program was one of the really beautiful things that we liked. All right, so some of our long-term goals, and before I even go over these, I know we're running out of time here. I just want to go over sort of the process that we looked at with this, and it really did come down to brainstorming with our students, engaging with our students, and in order to do that, we really had to talk to our students. I think it sounds really simple, but you know, from a professional standpoint, sometimes we forget that what we consider important isn't necessarily what they consider important or engaging. So working directly one-on-one with the students really helped us take off on this, and the social media presence was a massive, massive component to this. Not just being involved with social media, but allowing the students to drive the social media presence. Once they started sharing photos and tagging each other in photos, it took on a life of its own. So we just had to make sure to keep it fun and keep it something they wanted to be doing. I think, again, the biggest presence for the students was the ability to see what they were doing, their own individual measurability, and the measurability of the campus. It brought together this sort of campus community feeling of success and achievement and accomplishment that came week after week as they got more and better numbers. So our year-to-date analytics and goals. Recyclemania did close out. We saved, at the very close of it, 23,000 bottles, just over. We speculated out a little bit higher, but it came in at 23,127, I think. We are going to be having an annual Tap-In event. We plan on continuing this throughout the year, but really having a heavy promotional piece to it at the very beginning of the semester and bringing in freshmen and transfer students right as they come on campus to really sort of establish this as a cultural aspect of the SUNY Oswego campus. Additionally, because of the success of the program, we have had funding come through for bottle filling stations across campus, so that's been pretty exciting, and those will be installed and fully functional by next semester. Oh, bear with me. Okay. And this is the team of students and faculty and staff that we worked with. They were amazing people for the entire 8 weeks, and we had an absolute ball making this program happen. And that is it for me.
Great. Thanks, Jamie. We've got time for one quick question for you. There's been a lot of curiosity about the cost of the program, and if you could talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. There was obviously a significant upfront investment in this program. Purchasing the bottles, Companion, again, is a wonderful company to work with, but the upfront cost from their end was the purchasing of the bottles and the purchasing and maintenance of the app and the sort of live streaming ability to measure bottles. So there was an initial investment. It really depends on how many bottles you purchase, but I want to say we spent just under $8,500. Part of the way that our funding works on this campus is our students are signed up through billing for an automatic opt-out available sustainability fee. And the fee is intended to go toward programs and educational opportunities that really enhance them as environmental stewards. So this program applied to the students across campus and really had a major outreach component to it. So the funding came from our sustainability fee. Great.
We'll try and squeeze in some more questions at the end, but first I want to introduce Daita Sergi of the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education, otherwise known as ASHE. ASHE is a program partner on this webinar series, and Daita is going to share a couple of updates on their end.
Hi everyone, this is Daita Sergi. I am Programs Coordinator with ASHE. Thank you Larry and Tyler for having me today. We're very happy to partner on this webinar. ASHE's mission is to inspire and catalyze higher education to lead the global sustainability transformation. We provide an expansive collection of online resources, networking tools, and educational events, and today I wanted to tell you more about our newest resource, the Campus Sustainability Hub. And I am, okay, that's the slide. So this new resource was just launched a couple of weeks ago. You can find it at hub.ashe.org, and it's an online library that allows you to connect and share about sustainability in higher education. And it's quickly designed to help you find relevant resources through a centralized platform with advanced search and filtering options. The hub is organized by topics, and one of them is waste. And I wanted to show you how our waste main page is organized. But I don't know if the slide is moving. So here it is. We currently have over 6,000 resources in the hub, and over 300 are listed specifically in waste. We invite you all to browse the collection and welcome your contributions. Please upload your outreach materials, videos or photos about your waste programs, and so on. Additionally, I wanted to mention that ASHE's call for awards is now open. It's an awesome way to get recognition, so please apply by submitting a case study to the hub about your new zero waste initiatives or other waste-related programs. Applications are due Friday, June 3rd. Lastly, please stay tuned for the launch of the ASHE conference website schedule and registration next week. This year we have 2 full rooms dedicated exclusively to recycling and zero waste issues, so it will be an exciting conference for all of you. Thanks for your time, and I hope to see you all in Baltimore at the conference.
Thank you so much, Daita. I do want to mention that we still have a full slate of webinars coming up for our 2016 series. Our next program is coming up on June 9th, Recycling and Waste Reduction in College Residence Halls, a 360 focus on the unique challenges and opportunities in housing. August 11th, we will be looking at finding solutions for hard-to-recycle items. That should be a really interesting one. October 20th, campus food recovery programs. December 8th, getting into the details using contracts to improve recycling and waste reduction efforts. For details and to register, always go to our website, www.curc3r.org. I want to mention again that this webinar and all our webinars are available on our website. This one will be available in the next day or so, and we will be providing some other information that many of you have asked about, graphs from Jennifer's presentation and other data. We also have a case study already available on the website for the program at SUNY Oswego, so go ahead and check that out when you get a chance. We also want you to save the date for CURC's ASHE workshop in conjunction with the ASHE conference in Baltimore this fall. It will be hosted at Johns Hopkins University, and you can sign up directly through the ASHE conference registration, although registration at the ASHE conference is not a requirement to participate in the CURC workshop. I also want to let you know about several resources available from our partner Keep America Beautiful. The school year is coming to an end, which means it's already time to start planning your outreach activities for returning students and staff in the fall. Jennifer referred to America Recycles Day in her presentation. Colleges are encouraged to organize a campaign around America Recycles Day using the online recycling pledge, poster and banner templates, activity planning kits, and other resources to enhance your engagement with people across campus. And just like Earth Day, ARD can be adapted as a flexible theme to use over an extended period during the lead up to November 15th. 10 in the Bin provides a set of posters, flyers, and social media messaging that can be used locally to educate consumers about what can be recycled. Developed in partnership with the US EPA and other national organizations, these materials are designed to address confusion about the types of household items that can be recycled. Given the lack of standardized recycling messaging from one community to the next, these materials focus on the most commonly recyclable items universal to most programs in the US. These materials are free to download and to use on your campus or community from the America Recycles Day website at the URL address on your screen. Finally, there are several upcoming conferences and webinars that will be of interest to campus recyclers. The U.S. Zero Waste Business Council has an upcoming conference in Austin, Texas from June 1st through 4th. Experts from a diverse range of industries will share innovative ideas, practical tools and tips, and first-hand experience at creating value for their business through zero waste. The conference will include a half-day workshop on June 1st focused on zero waste efforts at colleges and universities, and an opportunity to tour the University of Texas at Austin's zero waste programs. The annual Green Sports Alliance Summit brings colleges and universities together with professional sports teams and industry leaders to advance sustainable practices at sporting events. This year's conference will take place June 28th to 30th at the Astros baseball stadium in downtown Houston. Green Sports Alliance is generously offering a discounted registration fee to CURC members and participants of the Recyclemania and Game Day Challenge programs. To receive a special promotional code, contact the Green Sports Alliance or CURC directly. The State Electronics Challenge is a free program that assists colleges, local government, and other organizations to improve their sustainability practices to decrease the environmental impact of electronic office equipment. This introductory webinar on May 10th will explain the technical assistance, tools, and other resources available to participants. Following this webinar, you should receive a prompt to complete a quick survey. We encourage you to take a minute to give us feedback on today's program. Again, we want to thank our sponsor, Waste Management, for their support, as well as recognize our partners, Keep America Beautiful, for the planning and logistical support, and ASHE for their promotional support. One last time, I want to thank all of our presenters, Jennifer, Delicia, Catherine, and Jamie. We look forward to seeing you for our June 9th webinar. Thank you so much for joining us.